Welcome to the Rise the Challenge podcast. Join me today. She's an entrepreneur, a leader, the founder and CEO of Fearless in Training, and the founder of Women Talk Money. It's Madeline Pratt. How are you doing today, Madeline?
Great. Thank you for having me here, Alex.
Thank you for coming on the show and getting the opportunity to talk about your Rise the Challenge. What we do with our guests is we go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
So I grew up on a very small island that was just outside of Seattle, and small town, less than like 20,000 people. And as a youngster, I was really big into sports. So I played soccer for a long time at kind of like the really hyper competitive level where you're driving all around the state every given weekend. You know, my parents were dedicated to that. And then later I got involved in dance. So I became a dancer and I danced 6 days a week all through middle school and high school. And I also was just a big academic. I'm a bit of a nerd at my core. And so I went to a private middle school and high school near here called Westtown Academy. And I spent a lot of my time, you know, doing theater, AP classes, college prep stuff, you name it.
So when you were doing those different activities, soccer and dance, was it one of those times where you wanted to try different things, or whatever opportunity came upon, you were for it?
It was definitely what I would call like a rise to the challenge kind of moment for both of them. So I love playing soccer. I started playing it when I was pretty young. And I realized that if I wanted to play at a more elite level, I'd really have to improve my skills. And so on a whim, I tried out for a select team, and I barely made it. I made it by like the skin of my teeth. I was like, I thought they made a mistake when they called me, to be honest. But I am the kind of person where if you put me in a situation where there are people who are more capable than me, I want to learn from them and I want to grow. And so it was a really great opportunity for me to improve my skills. And then dance came about because I actually had to give up soccer. So I had a really bad injury that kind of pulled me out of soccer, and it was a little bit trying and hard for my parents to keep up with the cost of the sport as I got more into it. And so I discovered dance, and I always needed that kind of really intense physical outlet for my energy. And so it picked up and took off where I left soccer behind.
Did you have any inspirations or motivations when you were growing up that's like someone you looked up to in a way?
Absolutely. So my biggest motivation was Mia Hamm. And I was little. The women's U.S. team was at the Olympics. They were just crushing it on every single level. And I was a brunette with a ponytail. And I just, like Mia Hamm was my goal. And I think for me, the reason why was because seeing a woman out there who was so talented, but also you know, it wasn't about the way she looked or, you know, the way she acted. It was just about her pure raw skill and like letting that speak for herself. And that was really inspiring to me and something I looked up to a lot.
Did you kind of, when you were looking up to her, did you kind of had that idea, I want to play maybe professionally as a soccer player? Or when you made that transition to dance, it was kind of like, I had my time for soccer back then?
I think with both things, I wanted to do it professionally, you know, in my mind. And then, you know, as you mature, reality kicks in a little bit and you recognize the level of skill and commitment, quite frankly, you have to have if you're going to play or do those things at an elite or a professional level. And so, you know, I definitely think when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, I was like, I'm going to become a professional soccer player. And then, you know, by the time I got a little older and saw how great some other people were in comparison, I realized that it might not be, you know, my core dream. I had planned to dance professionally as well. But when I got to college, I injured myself pretty badly. And so I had to hang up my dancing shoes, so to speak. But both gave me an opportunity to just really explore and practice and improve my skills at something I was really passionate about. So I'm really grateful for the time I spent with both of them.
I think some people can relate where they have that passion that they have and they kind of want to continue it, but then as they grow up, they're learning more about themselves and they're finding new passions in life. I always tell a funny story with me. I always, when I was younger, wanted to be a game show host. I don't know why I wanted to be a game show host. Todd Newton, who was the host of Whammy, the new version of it, was like a hero to me. And as I got older, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this. Like, there's no like set path to get to that stage in my life. And so then I started branching out playing sports. I'm like, okay, I had that fun. Maybe it can happen in the future, but I knew I had to give up on it. But you never know nowadays. Anything can happen. I could be the next game show host on TV after this, but that would actually make me laugh. But
Especially though with all the new shows and stuff coming up. Like I was just listening to a story this morning on NPR about how everybody's obsessed with that new show, The Floor is Lava. And I feel like Netflix just keeps spinning up so many shows. You just got to get in with some of those writers, and who knows what could happen.
I know, it's like they come up with these ideas. You're like, why didn't they come up with this like years ago? Like it seems like now is the perfect time for all these ideas. And I know like these shows that are doing like celebrity watch party where they're just filming celebrities watch TV shows at home. It's like they could have done this like years ago, but it's just the timing of everything works perfectly. What was your dream job as you gotten older that you wanted to do?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So when I got into high school, I was really passionate about science, and so there was kind of a culmination of different events that happened in my life that pulled that forward. I was, like I said, a little bit of a nerd to begin with, and I was really into reading, research, and things of that nature. And when I was 13, my cousin, my baby cousin, who I had known since obviously the time she was born, passed away from leukemia. And so there was a huge passion in me to solve that as a problem. And I was really passionate about becoming a pediatric oncologist. So I went to college and originally was on a very pre-med focused path. And I was working, as a research fellow at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle, in a lab that studied prostate cancer research. And I, thought that was the path I would go down for a while, was to either become a pediatrician or be a pediatric oncologist. And discovered along the way that, maybe research wasn't my love. The amount of chemistry courses that were required of me, and not just taking them, but actually acing them. And then also the path of med school was just not something that I was cut out for, because I ended up having a son when I was in college. And so trying to take all that on top of having a little one was a bit too much to bear. But I am very grateful for the time I spent learning those things, and I can read a research paper like the best of them, and I got published a couple of times, so it was a great exploration.
You mentioned that you were kind of like a nerd growing up. Did that kind of affect your self-confidence in a way to like meeting people or interacting with other people, or did you not let it get to you and you were just being yourself?
So I'm like, most people would not realize that I'm like a really deeply rooted introvert, but I was joking with one of my team members recently, like there's no better sign that you're an introvert than being in quarantine and feeling like you still don't have enough alone time, because that's like when you know. And so I was introverted growing up, but my parents, my mom has a background in the arts, and so she was really big about putting us into things that were essentially performative in nature. And so, dance being one of them, we went to a school that always had drama performances. The school also required a lot of presentation and speaking, public speaking as part of the academic rigor. And so it kind of trained me in a way, to be honest. And so, I'm still a person, if I go to a networking event, or if I'm going to go be at a conference, it's energetically draining for me. I have to like, a couple deep breaths and like really put it on, but I do know how to turn it on because it was something I was literally brought up and trained to do.
I'm not an introvert, I'm an extrovert, but like during this quarantine time, I'm like, I need to go see people. Like I will go to the grocery store just to be around people. And I'm always there where if I'm in a group, like you said, with networking, I'm always the same way. I'm taking a couple deep breaths because I'm like, I don't know any of these people. Like, I don't know what to say. But then it's like when I get comfortable around people, that's when now I'm going to start talking probably someone's ears off. But it's one of those things where I have to be comfortable with myself around a group of people. When you were getting involved in those things, like dance for one thing, did it kind of get you comfortable being around people because you're always working with a group of people in your classes?
Definitely, and in the dance environment too, you learn to trust people really deeply because especially as you get more advanced in your skill set, there's things like you're trusting somebody to like hold your body up in the air, and so you build a little bit of a community where you feel like you're safe, and you really have to know people well and know people's personality types to feel like they're going to be able to literally hold you up in those moments where you're a little vulnerable. So definitely building that trust was big. And I also, the schools I went to, I was lucky they were really quite small. And so even if I wasn't best friends with everybody who went to school with me, we all knew each other really, really well. And, it was an academic environment where people were really encouraged and allowed to be themselves, which I don't think is typically very common in high school. Most people show up in high school and they're there's the person they are at school, and then there's the person they are really truly. And then a lot of us, you get to college and that's when you really start discovering who you are. But I was lucky enough to be in an environment as a teen that was really all about just encouraging kids to explore their identities and to be their full selves. And so I feel like I got to college and was maybe a little bit more solidified than somebody who was just kind of leaving the nest and like, who am I and how do I define my identity through whatever college has to offer.
I think college is the best way to find yourself as a person. I think a lot of people when in high school, they're kind of like, I don't know who I am as a person. Do I want to be with this certain group or this certain group? And I was kind of like, I'm just going to be me. But then college, when you start getting into those groups, you kind of feel that you might find people that are opposite as you, but that's the true friendships that are being created. I don't want to be with someone who wants to disagree with me all the time. I'm fine with that, but if you're just going to say your opinion matters, that's just not how I am. I'm fine with the disagreements in a way. When you were in college and you had your son, was there some time that in your thoughts where you may have regretted like not being able to complete something, but you kind of learned from yourself that this is the path that I'm going and I'm just going to make the best of it?
Yeah, so when I had my son in college, I took a year off right after he was born because I just wanted to really be there for the first year of his life. And I was already ahead a year in school because I had skipped a year in high school. And so I didn't feel like I was getting like too far behind or anything like that. But at the time, everyone had said to me, no, just like get your degree done, go get your degree done. And as soon as he was 1, I went back to school to finish that last year. And going back to school when you have a baby who sits still and sleeps half the day versus going back to school when you have a toddler who runs around and needs constant vigilance was a very different task. And, it took a lot of determination to complete my degree. So, luckily I was able to have access to some level of childcare, but there were many days I lived far away from the school where I was going to, where I was getting up at like 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning, and I would ride a bus and I would take my son in a stroller on the bus and I would ride him to downtown Seattle and I would drop him off with my mom, and then I'd get on another bus and then I'd go back to school and then I'd do a full day of classes and then I'd do that all in reverse and not get home till 8, 9, 10 at night. And it took just a lot of willpower, and luckily it was my senior year, and so I had some professors I was super established with, and they really wanted to see me graduate. And so when I needed flexibility, if I needed to bring my son to class, they would let me bring him, and I would, set him up with coloring books at my feet and be working away. But it definitely took a different level of determination than your average student. But my professors knew that I was hungry for completing my schooling because I was willing to show up despite all of those odds.
So having those support system, if you didn't have those, would it have been harder mentally for you to be able to go through everything that you went through during those times? But because your teachers were so motivating to help you accomplish your degree?
That the support system made a huge difference. And I think that people being really understanding and open and encouraging, my family was a huge support system during that time as well. And so, when I did graduate, it almost felt like this like collective effort. Like we've done it. Like there's this photo where I'm like holding my son, and my degree. And I felt like it was something that he got to be a part of in a way. And I doubt, honestly, he even remembers it because he was all of 2 at the time. But it made a big difference to feel like, we all accomplished that goal as opposed to something that I just, powered through on my own.
So after you completed your degree, what was the next step for you?
Making money. So I graduated, right in the height of the recession, and everybody had high hopes and aspirations for taking the degree they got. Mine was in medical anthropology and global health, and turning that into something. But really, I had kind of three options ahead of me that were directly applicable to that degree. I could go work in the nonprofit sector. I could work in research, which at the time was being gutted from a funding perspective, or I could go back to school and get my doctorate and go ahead and go into the academia and working in a university setting and doing global research. And for me, none of those aligned with what I needed to do right then, which was truly to make money and to be able to support my son and I. And so I was lucky enough that one of my former professors had reached out to me and mentioned that there was a tech company in the town that I had grown up in and was moving back to that was looking to hire. And it was, just an entry-level sales job, sitting in the basement, dialing your days away, smiling. You had to hit a quota of 75 calls a day. And, you had to convert a certain number of opportunities for the sales team. And you were paid an hourly wage, but really to truly make money off of it, you had to make commissions. So I dove headfirst into that and worked there for a couple of years and grew to join their business development group. And it was a great entry-level experience for me, and it was really what kickstarted my career. But it was definitely that little back of the mind driver of I've got to provide for myself and my son that pushed that forward.
So you were going to do anything to make money to support your son and yourself, that even it took that risk by not being able to do what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think there was a part of me that trusted and at least knew enough people that had built interesting careers for themselves that I could see that, even if I didn't, I didn't set out or aspire to be an inside sales rep at a small software company, I knew that one thing could lead to another. And so I think that that's one thing that is unique about me, is that I always looked for not just, this is the moment I'm in, but this is going to lead to that next moment or that next goal, whatever that may be. And I might not even know what that is yet. But if I, keep my eyes open and I'm really aware of who I'm meeting, I've always said, you never know, treat everybody with kindness, because you never know who you could be working for or working with. And I've built a career that's entirely off the relationships that one has led to the next, has led to the next. And now I look back now and I have consulting clients that know me back from that inside sales job, and they've just watched me grow my career over the past decade, and they have seen the skills that I brought to the table. And so it's these funny full circle moments that make you really value the relationships and the opportunities that led to the next thing.
I think one great point you brought up is you never know what's going to happen, what skills you're going to gain, and where that's going to take you. I graduated with a sports management degree, and I was all about sports business, wanting to do that, but the sports world's hard. And the first thing you have to do is go into ticket sales. And that was just not my goal. That's not me. I'm a creative person. I'm a person that likes to interact with people. So the job I'm at now, it kind of is like I'm taking a longer route, but I'm gaining even more skills than what I would have had if I just started where I was. What's the biggest skill you learned, or even something that you learned about yourself doing that sales job?
The value of relationships. So for me, I recognized that there was so to back up a little bit. So I was working on this inside sales team. It was a company that sells a tax related product. And your goal, the way it worked, was that the company had bought a domain called taxrates.com. And basically what would happen is leads would come in from that website because somebody had gone and downloaded a tax table. And then you'd call those people up and you'd say, hey, I know you've been to taxrates.com. Did you know that you could automate this? You could do this better way. And you'd hope that would lead to a conversation with people. And what I started to recognize and realize was that a lot of the people visiting taxrates.com were accounting professionals. And accounting professionals are very relationship driven. And not only that, in this particular instance, and a lot of instances with software, they are actually the most valuable client you can have, because they're not just, buying software one time, they're potentially buying it across their base of business. And so what I started to get very good at is building relationships within the accounting industry and with these professionals, and not just talking to them about the one opportunity, but talking about their practice. And those relationships led me to being recognized by the team and saying, we're building actually a new team. We want to build a new team that focuses on working with the accounting industry. So I was hired to join that team. And then my work inside that team led to my next job, which was facing the accounting industry. And just like one stepping stone led to the next. And along the way, I was able to take the relationships I built. And even though I moved to a different company, those people still knew me, they still trusted me, and they knew that I wasn't going to just, sell them some crap product or make false promises to them. And so even when I started my own companies, people had remembered those relationships we had built. And so it was pretty amazing to watch, as I stepped out on my own, how those relationships followed me and became my first consulting clients.
So after working with the tax company, what was the next step for you?
So the next step was joining a large company. So I had been always, it was very cool in the startup world. I learned a lot. And the company I worked for, I was like the 125th employee, and they grew to over 1,000 employees while I was there. So it was like this wild ride. And from there, I joined a much more seasoned company. So I joined a Fortune 500. I joined into it, and I joined their business development group. And those two experiences were like night and day, because when you work for a company like that, where they've got 8,000 employees and they've got, layers upon layers of management and layers upon layers of approval, and everything's got to go, through HR and through, all of these different layers, the pace is really different. And I was joining another new team. It was a brand new team that was going to approach the accounting market. And, nobody had ever done this job before. And what I am very good at is coming into situations where there is nothing but maybe a loose idea and just going, okay, let's figure this out, folks. And so I, dove in head first and started building relationships there, took along with me, again, some of those relationships from the tax company, and spent the next 10 months just like blowing it out of the water, performing at 300% of my sales goals, because again, I'm a very incentive-driven person, and I had a child to support. And it was a really interesting learning experience, but one of the first things I figured out was corporate culture is not my jam. I don't like having to wait for permission to do things. I'm very self-motivated. I'm more of an ask for forgiveness kind of gal. And so to have to kind of like sit on my hands and wait for things to be developed, like I just wanted to run faster and do more. And so I loved the experience and I loved the team. But I had an opportunity to join another company after that in a really founder level almost capacity. I was their first hire in the US. And so that opportunity was something I just jumped at and was really excited to take on after learning that corporate wasn't exactly my jam.
So were you a person that was trying to get going on certain tasks? So like you said, you've been like waiting for stuff, like you were wanting an answer to an email right away or a phone call right away.
Yeah, I'm an ideas person. And so for me, I would bring a lot of creativity to the table, and it would be like, oh, that's such a great idea. Now we got to go talk to 200 people to see if it's okay for us to do that idea. And so it was challenging in the sense of having to wait. I'm not a very patient person, but it was also challenging in the sense of just the time it took, to really vet things through. And so I'd be in a lot of situations where I'd be like trying to track down the right person, because it's a massive company. And so would say, you got to talk to so-and-so, and then you talk to so-and-so, and then you get to the last person that you were really supposed to talk to, and they go, oh, if only you had talked to me 2 weeks ago, but now we don't have, budget or bandwidth or whatever the thing was. And so that was really frustrating for me personally. And I think that I was a little, there's always been this little entrepreneurial spirit in me. And so it was hard to just kind of operate within the guidelines that were given when I wanted to create more than that.
So the next company you said was founder driven. What were you doing with that company?
So I was brought on board, and it was really a leap of faith from that leadership in me, and I'm forever grateful to them for the opportunity. So I was given the opportunity to become their director of business development. So I was a business development manager at Intuit, and the next company, just by happenstance, part of my role at Intuit was vetting other technology companies for the clients that I was working with. And so I vetted this piece of technology and then learned that they were looking to build a team in the United States. The company was headquartered in Australia. And so, they took a chance on me, I took a chance on them. It was a brand new product, and it was an incredible journey. So the first thing, I did, like 2 weeks on the job, we went to the biggest trade show in the space, and just, I spent 2 weeks studying the ins and outs of the product so I could at least somewhat speak to it at the booth. And we walked away with more leads than they had ever gotten at a conference. And it was just me. And so I was like, what am I going to do with 867 leads? Like, I'm good at dialing 75 people a day, but even then, like, we need more help. And so really and then for the next 3 years, I was just on a path to building out the team. And so I took kind of two sides of my role. One was just constantly hiring and developing team members, taking off hats because I was doing everything under the sun, passing that on so that people could rise up in the ranks and take on and build out roles. And then strategic business development work. So really looking for the opportunities to bring the product to the market or get it in front of the right people or go to trade shows. And, I think in the first year alone, I clocked over 160,000 miles just flying around the country, flying around the globe to every single place that somebody would listen to me, getting up on stages, pitching the product, being behind a booth. And it was a lot of fun. And I did that for the next 3 years. I grew the team to I think we had 8 people when I left. Now it's like a team of 15 or so. And it was a really amazing process in team building and getting to really watch people come into their own in terms of their abilities. And I'm even so close, like a couple hours ago, I was even on a call with my former employee, and we both moved on. But again, I really value relationships. So just, it was a joy to watch people kind of grow up under the company and the team that I was building.
Did you ever have a moment when you were at that job where you got to like stand back and like feel what you've got accomplished in a way, and not, instead of feeling overwhelmed with, okay, now I have all these leads and now I got to get to work? Did you ever have that sense of, wow, look what I've done?
Not at the time. Quite honestly, I was running at about 125 miles an hour for 3 years straight. And it wasn't until I decided to move on that I could step back and appreciate the work I had done this far. We had grown the company to multi-million dollars in the US. We had, acquired, tens of thousands of new customers. We had, I had built these programs that had led to a lot of revenue. And so it wasn't until I, was in those moments of reminiscing as I was about to leave the company that I started to really feel pride for what I had built. And I would say, like, the biggest thing that I look back and I'm very proud of is the team, is of the people I hired, who, even though I moved on, I made a point, to leave behind a legacy of really talented employees who I nurtured to the point where they could step in and they could take over and manage, after I left. And so that's what I look back now and I'm most proud of is the people I was able to elevate, because a lot of them, it was one of their first, jobs maybe. And so to see the ways that they've been able to grow in their careers from that experience has been really rewarding.
As your son is getting older and he's getting into where he might have to keep an eye on him, was it getting easier or harder, or were you still having that good support around you that made it kind of easier for you to be able to support you?
So, I had a couple things happen. One was I got married. And so my husband was a huge support system and has always been very supportive of my career and encouraging of me to just go. And so, for example, during that time when I was traveling a ton, just having him, and then also my parents being very available to be able to provide care. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do the job that I did. And then later I got the opportunity to really start bringing them along a little bit for the ride. And so, not every trip by any stretch, but I was really adamant, I was going all around the world, and if I could bring them along, it wasn't flawless by any stretch, but it was challenging. But he got to go to Australia. He's been able to, go to all these, I'm thinking out loud here. He's been, to Texas, and he's been to California, and they, anytime I had a trade show or an opportunity where I could bring them along for the ride and be able to also not just, see these other parts of the country, but see what I did for work and be closer to my family. If I was traveling that much was really, really important to me.
I think every time they're able to travel with you, you just cherish the moment at the time, like enjoy the time that you're spending with each other, which is what some people that are in your situations like that, they may not get that opportunity. So luckily you were able to do that.
Yeah.
After that job, after the 3 years, what was the next step? Next step in your journey?
Yeah, so the next step in my journey, kind of started to unfold partway through my time at that last company. I had, I had the universe kind of calling to me. If you'll stay with me in that woo moment for a sec. So what had started to happen was, I was building my career in tech, and I obviously have, friends who were doing various things in their careers. And I just started to meet more and more women and also have more and more friends that were starting their own companies. And so they knew what I had done and what I did for work, and that I was very savvy when it came to technology and digital marketing and things like that. And so, one person would tell another person, who would tell another person. I started spending a lot of my free time just talking to female business owners who were struggling to find the confidence or figure out the tools they needed to get started in business, whether that was building a business plan or building a website or integrating Square with something, or all these little pieces that it takes to get a business off the ground. And I started to have these conversations in my free time and on the side, and it led to a little bit of coaching. And so I was working with female entrepreneurs one-to-one, and it was just something in the free time, so to speak. But as I did it, my heart started kind of tugging at me and was like, oh man, what if you could do this every day? What if you could do this every day? And this idea, of not just working for one company, but working for multiple companies, and the problem solving and the diversity of work, and the way that I could, leverage my skills in all these different ways, especially for people who didn't have those skills or maybe didn't realize they did and needed help and encouragement, was really calling to me. And so I made kind of the hard decision to let go my cushy tech job and all the security that came with it, and realize I wanted to start my own thing. And so I ventured out part-time. I was doing it on the side, and then I went full-fledged into the company and had started building it from the ground up. It was just me and a laptop and working from home, and it was really nerve-wracking at the start because we had just bought our first house. My other son was about to turn 1, and so there was a lot of responsibility riding on me because I had been the primary earner for our family. And so I kind of didn't have any choice but to succeed, and luckily I did. So yeah.
What was the mission of the business that you created?
So it's evolved a little bit over time. Originally, the mission of the business was to, make things feel more attainable for female-founded businesses. And now we say that we're on a mission for businesses that are on a mission. And what we mean by that is really helping businesses that have a really strong value component to their company. So a lot of what I teach, talk, and train about is the importance of core values, and how do you bring them into life in your business and in your brand, so that it's not just this thing that you put on the website or the thing you put on the wall, but it's actually something that you're embodying through the actions and the goals and the vision you set inside your company. And so today we work with all sorts of different entrepreneurs that are on a path to building companies that change the world, basically. And it's a lot of fun. A lot of our clients come from my existing network and my team's existing network. So we work with everybody from really large tech companies to large accounting firms, because I've still got that network, to now we're starting to do a lot more e-commerce work. And there's definitely a thread that we love working with women and female founders to really help them with skills that they might have not had themselves, or just not had the confidence to bring to light in their business. And so we do a little bit of coaching, a little bit of community-centric work where we lead groups of people, and then we also do consulting on marketing, branding, and sales.
One thing I noticed when I was researching your company, that it's all women. Was that the mission or the plan the whole entire time, was to keep it women running, so that the women can relate to each other and be able to communicate learn and talk?
Yeah, you know, I built my team pretty organically, but there's definitely a desire in our company to create work by women and for women. And for me, you know, part of the reason I structured the company the way I did was because I needed flexibility. And so some of our team are moms and need the ability to work from home. And I saw a lot of, you know, at least particularly in my rise in different companies, that there wasn't a lot that for women at the higher level was a super attractive role to be in a traditional environment. And so we talk about, you know, entrepreneurship as a path to equality, or as a path to shaping spaces where you can show up and be yourself and do your best work, but not have to compromise, you know, your family or other things. And I think that for the majority of women, particularly in the corporate world, you don't really have another option. There's either, you know, you bust your butt and you get to this high level and you hire a nanny like I used to, or, you know, you get to that top level and you look around and you say, I don't really want to do this anymore. And you create something on your own so that you can have the flexibility and the freedom that you want for your life and for your family.
As the individual that's running this company, when you were in a position where you had to talk to a manager or send something, get requests, what's something that you do differently as the manager or the higher level person in your company that you saw differently than when you were responding to a higher level person?
I would say the thing that my team would say I do differently that I didn't really realize at the time until I got this feedback is that I'm really open about how I'm doing and how I'm handling things. So particularly right now with, you know, the COVID pandemic, you know, I think that there's this premise that we as leaders or we as CEOs have to be like, you know, buttoned up and we've got to have all the answers and we've got to, you know, hide our emotions. And we built a culture that's really different than that. I built a culture where, you know, we start every team meeting talking about how are you feeling? Like, how are you doing right now? Because quite honestly, for me as a leader, that informs the decisions I make. You know, if a team member shows up and they say, I'm doing awesome and I have tons of energy and I'm really excited about the work I'm doing and I'm ready for more, you know, I'm going to allocate that new work to them. Whereas if a team member shows up and says, I'm frazzled and I'm stressed out and I need help, I know that we need to do the different things from a leadership perspective. So, but what I uncovered was the only reason my team feels comfortable sharing in that way is because I show up and share that way and model that as a leader. And it is that level of like vulnerability and empathy that makes it possible for us to connect on a deeper level as a team and make people feel, you know, cared for, even in the harder moments where we're dealing with an upset client or you know, where I'm coming down with maybe a little more heavy-handed feedback and things like that.
I think having that personal connection with a staff, not crossing the boundaries, but like you said, how are you feeling? What's going on? I think that's important because then you kind of get closer to your employees in a way where you kind of learn more than, okay, you're just this title or this person in this office. And I like hearing that. I know with my team that I work with, we got into that personal side where we learned about each other's lives because I think it helps learn more about that person as an individual. Like, oh, he might act this way, so let's try to make sure we work in this situation. And nothing can go wrong. I mean, we still are learning each day, and I've noticed because with my company, there's a lot of age differences. I'm the youngest, and I'm working with a lot of people that have been working at my company as long as I've been alive. So it's kind of they're seeing what's the new generation looking like. You talked about core values when you're helping other businesses. What are the core values that you use in your business?
So we've got a lot of them. not a lot, but we've got a couple. But I'll speak to the few that are most important to me. One is we call it cite your sources, and so this is kind of an homage to my background in research a little bit and my background in academia. But you know, one of the things that we do is we produce a massive amount of online educational content, whether it's free webinars or our member programs, and when I started doing that, I noticed that there was a lot of people teaching and sharing topics without giving credit where credit was due. And I am nothing but an amalgamation of the books I've read and the things I've watched and the things I've listened to. And so it's really, really important to me to not take credit for the work that isn't mine, but to always cite our sources and detail where we're getting information from, and to pass that work on to people as well. You know, we're always saying, you know, yeah, we learned this from this book or this website, or we read this article, go check it out. So not to pretend like that work is ours is really important to us, because there's a lot of people in the online content space, unfortunately, that are stealing other people's work and claiming that it's theirs. Another core value that is really important to us, and particularly pertinent right now, is acknowledging your privilege. So I, you know, faced a certain series of challenges growing up in my life, but I also had a ton of advantages that put me in the position I am to run the company that I do today and to earn the money that I do today. And that in itself is, you know, quite a privileged position to be in. And so it's really important for us to lead a team that is intersectional and really thinks about the ways in which our individual experiences influence the outcomes or the opinions or the beliefs that we hold, and to also just acknowledge that, you know, whether it's a client we're working with or a member of our team, we're all coming to the table with different experiences and different privileges. And that's really important for us to acknowledge first and foremost before we can enter into a conversation where people feel safe and people feel encouraged. So those are just two of them, but those are two that stand out and are super important to me.
When you talked about with college where you had the challenge of raising your son, have you had any personal challenges as a CEO and founder during this time?
Yeah, so a couple. So one is that I deal with chronic pain. So you know, my technical diagnosis is fibromyalgia, but for those who don't know, fibromyalgia is just like amalgamations of signs and symptoms that they can't explain. So they give you that label, and you know, it's you know, it's everything from, I'll have days where my hands go numb, I've had rashes all over my body, and it affects my energy levels, and it leads to a lot of fatigue and pain. And so that's something I deal with on a daily basis. And, you know, again, in that spirit of vulnerability, my team knows about it. My husband's super aware of it. And, you know, if I'm having a day where I need to rest, I really have to take it, because I'm not going to be able to get up and continue to work in the same way if I'm struggling. And, you know, that's the biggest challenge for me as a leader, is I'm a go kind of gal to begin with. And I like to always be on. And it's really hard to figure out, how do I shut off, or how do I take, you know, days off. I mean, full disclosure, I'm taking, I think, 5 days off in the next 2 weeks. And that's both a very big deal, because it's, you know, the most time I've taken off, with the exception of during a time period where I was literally recovering from surgery. But it's also, it means that I have to trust my team at a certain level, and I have to be okay knowing I can take the downtime and the business will survive. And I think for any entrepreneur, you're super driven, and if you love what you do, you know, you're not bummed out by the fact that you work every day, all day, every day, but it can catch up with you as well. And so for me, there's been a lot of learning of balancing, you know, okay, you know, I leave the laptop here at the office so that the work doesn't follow me home, or, you know, I schedule off days, or, you know, I think about, okay, if I was in a normal corporate environment, how much time off would I take annually? And how can I make sure that I'm doing that, if not more than I would in a corporate environment? Because I said that I started my company to be more, you know, flexible and available to my family, but am I actually doing that, or am I just working all the time? So it's definitely a juggle.
So for someone that's maybe going through the same thing, where they have a hard time taking the time off, what would you suggest they do to be able to say, I'm not going to be looking at my emails or phone calls or anything like that, and I'm going to enjoy the needed time off?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I've implemented this past year that have made a huge difference. And because I'm a little bit of a nerd, they're all going to be tech-based. So one is, there's this really amazing free add-on for Gmail called Boomerang, and it has a pause functionality. And all it does, if you hit that button, is it stops emails from coming into your inbox until you unpause it, or you can set it for a scheduled time. And so for me, this has been a game changer, because I'm one of those people who constantly wants to be making sure that I'm getting back to people. And on average, I get between, like, I would say like a healthy 100 emails a day. And I'm lucky if I can get to what we like to call inbox zero. And so that ability to pause, or even sometimes, like, because I'm so neurotic, I have to snooze emails that are in my inbox so that they don't pop up again until tomorrow. And then I have to pause the inbox so nothing more comes in. But that really helps me from a mental perspective, because I'm not going to see those, popping up on my phone, and I'll be able to focus on what I need to focus on. And I even do that sometimes if I'm like really needing to get a project done. I just pause all of that so I don't have the distraction. The other thing that I make a point to do is delete or pause notifications on apps on my phone. So, we use Slack for internal communication. I have, several thousand followers on Twitter and LinkedIn. And so, if I have the notifications for those platforms on, I would just be distracted all day long. And so making a point to either remove those apps from my phone or turn notifications off during times when I'm trying to be more off, it's really helpful.
That's been the hardest thing for me. I don't have the notifications on like social media, but it's just so tempting to go on the app and look at it, like who's messaging me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and all of that. Because I feel like if I'm not getting to them right away, I'm doing something wrong. I've been trying to turn my phone off completely, like throw it in my closet and try not to even look at it. And it's been nice for a couple hours, but then I'm like, okay, who's texted me? Did I miss anything? Because I'm always worried like something wrong is going to happen when I'm not around my phone. But I just tell people, if you need me, wait a couple hours, unless it's like an emergency, then you can respond to me. And I know a lot of people have been putting like the do not disturb button on, but it's still, your phone's still on. So I know that's something that I'm working on myself, is letting go. And on the days that I've taken vacations, but it's so tempting to look at work emails. But you got to remember, you got to enjoy the time where you're at and not worry about it. It's not like anything's going to go bad in 1 week. But so trust is a huge thing for you. And how long did it take for you to build that trust with your employees where you're able to let them take care of the things while you're gone?
It took a little while, and it really depended on the team member and the level of experience they were bringing to the table. I have a creative director who, like, the second she came on board, I just felt like we were so in sync that I was able to hand off a lot of work to her, and the quality and caliber of work she does, is just something that I can just look forward to and just know that it's going to get done, which is a huge relief for me. The other thing too that has really helped us build the trust is to get a little bit better at understanding, like, who are the type of team members we need to hire in the first place. And so I think culturally have gotten a better understanding of the way we need to work and how we work. And we're starting to put better tools and systems into place inside the business so that we can feel like there's visibility on anything that's in progress. And that's really helped build the trust over time as well.
So talk about Women Talk Money. I hope I'm saying that correctly, because I know there's an X in women's. Talk about how you started that and what's the mission and goals for that.
So Women Talk Money was something, believe it or not, I stumbled into. It's my second company, and the way that it started was I'm connected to all of these women in the accounting industry from my time working in the space, and I was on Twitter one day, and it was kind of at the dovetail of a lot of cultural moments that were happening with the Me Too movement and Time's Up. And I think just this overwhelming realization that, like, we have come so far as women, and yet there's still not proper representation and inclusion of our ideas in all these places where we've built our careers. And so in this particular instance, it was a panel discussion that was being published by the largest accounting event in the industry globally, and it was called the future of the accounting profession. And it was 5 nice, I'm sure very intelligent, capable, but 5 nice old white guys and no women. And there was just this conversation that unfolded online of women just being like, really you didn't think something as important as the future of this profession, which is predominantly female, actually, you didn't think to include us in the conversation? And so I, being the kind of person I am, just spontaneously threw up a web form on the site at the time and just said, I don't really believe that there are not qualified women speakers out there. If you are one, submit your name here. And this wild thing happened within the course of like 72 hours because, you know, I did it on a weekend. It was like a Saturday. And at the time I didn't have my Twitter notifications turned off. My phone just was buzzing all day. And my husband's like, what is going on? And by Monday morning, you know, it had created a lot of noise. And I had, you know, over 100 women from around the globe submit their information to me. And I knew I had a strong network of women in the industry. So I wasn't too surprised. But then I was like, oh crap, what am I supposed to do with these? And so over the next few months, I worked with a friend. I brought her on board to just build out a website essentially. And when we launched it, it was just a directory. And I was like, you know, this is going to be the answer to if anybody claims they can't find qualified female speakers, we can send them this directory. And also if people are trying, you know, trying to do their best to make sure that, you know, whatever they're cultivating, be it a conference or, you know, a panel discussion, is inclusive, like let's make sure they have a resource to do that, because I knew that there were a lot of well-intentioned people out there, but people draw on their networks. And so let's put this out into the world. So we launched that in, let's see, go back in the time machine, about a year ago, so June 2019. And when we launched it, it was met with a lot of, you know, joy, and people were really excited about it. And then we had this second wave of women come out to us and say, you know, I love this network, I love what you've built. But I'm not ready to be on that speakers list, but I want to know those women. I want to learn from those women. And I want to be able to connect with a network of women in this space. And so in January, we launched what we call the Women Talk Money community. And so it's a space we get together regularly, and we have a Slack channel associated with it. And so that is a community and a network where we share about what it's like to run a firm as a woman, and talk about the challenges you face, and talk about, you know, the ways in which you can own your value and improve your practice. And it's a really, really awesome community. And the women that are a part of it are just so special to me. It's one of my favorite things I do all month. So yeah.
Kind of has evolved in just a year, where it went from just a list of names of people that have experience in those fields to it's a networking site. And these people can come together, talk, share ideas, and it's all about empowering people and growing. I think nowadays we're social media and we're all seeing these negative comments. We all need that positivity and support. I know support system was huge for you growing up in your career, that you're giving that support to all these women across the world. And it's a great thing to hear about this journey that you're on.
Thank you.
What has been the greatest thing that you've accomplished during the time of running your own business?
I think probably the most fulfilling thing for me has been, you know, growing a team and growing the business to the point where it's not just feeding my family, but it's actually feeding other people's family. You know, when I started the company, like I said, I had that kind of pressure on me to provide. And so I think a lot of my mindset, particularly in those early, you know, times was really limited, and was just like about like, what do I got to do to survive and get by? And I did a lot of work on myself through working with different coaches and a lot of reading and introspection around just kind of the power of money, and came to realize that the goal of my business, you know, was bigger than just being able to pay for myself and my bills, but it was to be able to give back to others. So not just get by, but give back. And so giving back through the form of being able to provide meaningful and well-paying work for other women, being able to give back by, you know, we do a lot of supporting and sponsoring of different, you know, women's networking groups and, you know, charitable groups and nonprofits that we care about, giving back in the form of mentorship, and being able to have the capacity to turn my business into this real conduit of commerce that allows for people to make money that's really meaningful to them. And so that's, you know, really what I'm most proud of, is that we've built something that is bigger than just me. It's you know, providing a lot of meaning to the lives of the women that we work with, and to the women that work for me.
Looking back at your passion growing up and what you wanted to do in college to now what you're doing now, do you have any regrets that you're on a different path, or you're happy of what the journey has been for you?
I'm really happy with the way the journey has been, and I don't think I would change anything, because you know, each stepping stone led to the next. I think that it's interesting to be as young as I am and have what I've built, because then it's like, okay, well, now what? And so right now I'm trying to just really, really focus on scaling and growing our company. I also, I write a ton, and so I'm working on my first book, which will be coming out next year. And so, that's probably maybe the next step in the path, is really putting that out to the world. But it's been an awesome ride, and I'm really, really excited just to be where I'm at right now.
So what does the future look like for you? You talked about you're writing a book. What does the future look like for you personally and professionally?
Well, getting 2 kids through school during COVID is an interesting challenge that I'm up against. But luckily, I've got this company that I can shape around the needs of our family. So that's definitely like the most imminent future is on my mind, as is for every mother in this country right now, is how do I, keep my kids engaged and not just in front of an iPad all day long. Yeah. The future also is focused on growing, my company and helping other people grow their companies. So, my biggest goal at this point is to build a venture capital firm that's focused on backing women founders. We, as women, capture about 1% of the venture capital dollars. The number varies depending on where you live, 1 to 4%, still way, way less than the number of women that own, start, and scale businesses. And in fact, women are a great bet from an entrepreneurship perspective, because we seek money to scale a concept that's working, not to just start a company. And so, my ambition is to take this company to a point where, it's really profitable, and we have the excess funds to spin off another venture and partner with other people who are passionate about female entrepreneurship to put dollars in the hands of business models that we believe in, and then partnering with other women that also bring expertise into the table. So a little bit almost like an incubator, if you will. So it's not just about giving people money, but also giving them the skills and expertise and mentorship they need to make sure their ideas come to life and really thrive.
For someone that's getting into entrepreneurship, what tips or advice would you give them to rise to the challenge in that industry?
So my first would be, do your best to be as focused as possible. And so there's a lot of different, beliefs and practices about this that I spend a lot of time writing, because it helps me distill down my ideas and discover which ones are the best. And I think the biggest challenge for me when I started my own company was I had so many ideas. And so being able, first year was just trying all those ideas on. Second year was really distilling those ideas down. And then now we're in a position where I've told my team, I'm like, don't let me follow any other ideas right now. We've got good ones. Let's just keep making them better. And so that ability to focus is really, really important. I'd also encourage anyone going down a path of entrepreneurship to invest in a coach, and make sure they're a good one, but invest in a coach. For me, my revenues doubled the second I hired my coach, and I coach as well. And even coaches need coaches is like the moral of that story, because you think about elite athletes, you think about anyone who's trying to perform at the top of the game, you've got to have somebody around to hold you accountable, be able to see the bigger picture and help guide you. And quite honestly, it'll pay for itself, because you'll be able to grow that much faster. So those would be my core advice.
The final question, for someone that's listening to this interview, what tips or advice would you give them to rise to the challenge, accomplish their goals, and overcome any obstacles based on your journey?
I would say surround yourself with people who believe in you. It's really, really important, particularly on the path of entrepreneurship. It can be challenging and it can be daunting. So get people around you who are not going to second guess you or going to question or tell you to get a real job, but people who believe in you, and find a community. For me, I've been lucky enough to build a community and then be a part of other communities that are all about entrepreneurship. And it obviously that leads to business, that leads to friendships, but most importantly, it grounds me with a group of people that get what I'm doing and are supportive of it. So it's been really, really helpful to me in my journey.
Well, Madeline, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us a little insight on your rise to the challenge. And I'm excited, and everyone else is going to be excited to see what's next for your future and what you're able to accomplish.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. It was a pleasure to be here.